Okay, I'm here with Jose Shorty Torres. Jose, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. I can't complain. It's another day. Besides being exhausted, at least I'm being productive. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, well, it's been a while since we last saw you in the cage in September. So how have you been keeping?
I've been keeping well, trying to keep myself definitely motivated and maintained. The hard part about for us, especially anyone with an American passport, we can't travel anywhere. Most of the world is like, everyone come on in except for you guys, and it's all Americans. So for both my opponent and I being American citizens with American passports,
Yeah.
there's only certain places we can go to, and I believe there's nothing guaranteed on when our next fight will be. And he literally just texted me right now saying, like, hey man, do you know where we're fighting again? So we're hoping in March, we're hoping in Bahrain, we're hoping in the
Yeah.
Middle East somewhere that allows the Americans. But until then, man, I've just been staying productive, and it's another day to get better and prepare more for him.
Yeah, you've set me up nicely there. The last fight, obviously, with Sean Santella was in the first round of the tournament, but it was a draw. So obviously the plan now is to book
Mhm.
that fight as quick as possible, really.
Yeah, and that's for us, we look at it as like, yeah, it sucks. We want to advance in the tournament, we want to just keep on fighting. But with COVID, only
Yeah.
fighting once last year for both of us, having a year and a half off layover, coincidentally for both of us, and going through our own little traumas at home, it's nice to be like, you know what? Even though we got a draw, we get to fight again. We to hopefully be mentally that much more prepared for, physically that much more prepared for, and it's another paycheck. So we're definitely very, very happy about that, and just adds another fight in our contract.
How's training been with you? Because obviously I think you're at ATT a lot of the time now, right?
No, actually, I left ATT in June, July, give or
Oh,
take,
okay.
and then I've
Yeah.
been I've been personally living with Dean Thomas and training with him in the garage. Like we have mats, everything's all decked out, and my main training partner is Gillian Robertson. So
Yeah.
it's just been us three as a little awkward, very very awkward family, and it's been a good time, man. It's such a positive atmosphere, and having somebody like Dean Thomas, a big UFC veteran, a big notable guy, should be in the Hall of Fame really, and he's coached some world champions before. Being able to have him at your side and telling you what to do, holding your hand and putting you in different positions, not just in the MMA world, but networking and teaching you stuff like morals and outside life stuff. It's really beneficial, man. It's a great opportunity.
And I've seen some of your things on social media. The three of you seem to have a pretty good sort of relationship with each other as well, don't you?
So, it's something like that. It's one of those things that I'm the it's a very weird mixture because Jillian's an extreme introvert. I'm an extreme extrovert, and Dean is like 60-40, 70-30, introvert, and then like that 30% extrovert. So he has kind of like limitations to where he's like, on camera, I'm gonna be Dean Thomas and yada yada yada. And then when the camera's off, he's like, all right, I'm gonna be in my room. I need to regroup and recover for
Yeah.
3 hours later. He disappears. So we're definitely a very awkward family, but we all trust each other and we do anything for each other. So it's a great opportunity to know that team wise, if we need something, whether it's inside the cage or outside the cage,
Yeah.
there's always gonna be somebody there to help us.
Has it been helpful during the pandemic having like a smaller crew then?
It's been an extremely beneficial thing. I know they both actually caught COVID. I've
Yeah.
never tested positive, knock on wood. I know I was feeling sick for a little while, but I had my reasoning behind that. For me, traveling overseas and doing all these things, man, jet lag, it actually beats you up. Anyways, man, it was extremely beneficial, but having a small team just in general, whether the pandemic or not, obviously there's limitations of possibly catching COVID, but you get one-on-one time. It's literally a
Yeah.
personal training session every single time I go with him, whether it's just him and I or him and I and Jillian. So it's extremely beneficial when it comes to learning. But it's been a weird time. Even in the state of Florida, Florida's a very open state.
Yeah.
So we can go to any gym we want and travel and train, but other states across the country, like for example, Illinois, Chicago, where I'm from, you can't do anything. All the businesses are still technically closed, even though many of them are running. It's still technically closed, so it gets difficult for training partners.
You mentioned her a little bit there. So Gillian Robinson, Overton, she's fighting Miranda Maverick that just got announced.
hmm
How's everything going with that preparation?
It's great. One thing that Dean, really comes up to us, and given it's more accessible to her because UFC does do last minute fights. And then when I fought in UFC twice,
Yeah.
both of them being last minute fights,
Yeah.
she just stays low on weight and stays ready. We did expect the fight to happen later on in the year, but because of COVID restrictions and so many different things, fights are just coming out of the woodworks. And for her, I believe she had the opportunity to take it early February, but for whatever the reason, Dean was like, "Hey, man, I think we're just gonna see if we can move that back to make it an appropriate time to where it's still a last minute camp." But she's never really out of camp. Even when she lost her last fight, she had stitches on her nose. Literally the next day, she was at our house just training, and just like, "Hey, don't hit me in the face, please." And we kept on moving, doing all these things, and then the next week she was doing a grappling tournament. So when it comes to productivity, like Dean makes us, get motivated to do more things, not just MMA, but stay active in jiu-jitsu, stay active practicing. Hey, you lost, cool. The next day we're gonna watch film. Oh, you're beat up, cool. We'll find a way to figure out a productive possibility to work out. So it's been awesome, man. And her camp, we're actually just practicing today. We have another practice later tonight. It's been extremely productive. So we watch a lot of film. We break down our opponents, and no matter who we fight, we're just ready to put on a show.
So you mentioned obviously you're fighting with Brave now. You had a little bit of experience with the UFC. So how do, whether it's being in different country or whatever, how do the two organizations sort of differ?
Honestly, for me, it's been the respect. The UFC is strictly a business, but they are number one for a reason. They are phenomenal businessmen.
Yeah.
With Brave, they're all ran by fighters. So even though they're not as big as the UFC right now, but I mean, the promotion's only been around for 4 or 5 years now. And it's one of the biggest promotions in the world, which is amazing. It's the fact that they're ran by fighters. So when I've had my own personal dilemmas, whether I've had to back out of fights because of injury or back out of fights because of mental grief and trauma from my father passing away, they understood. They know that this stuff happens because they're fighters. They've experienced it. Muhammad Shahid, the president of Brave, I used to train with him personally. Like we used to punch each other in the face. And at the time, I believe he was going through a knee surgery. So he understands the trials and tribulations of the sport, the injuries, the outside life perspective, you having to pull out for whatever reason or needing more money for whatever reason. So he understands that, and he's obviously in the business realm as well now. So it's the respect factor is a huge thing, and that's something I always say with the UFC. Like, yeah, money is huge and it helps, but it's not the biggest thing to me. I want to be, especially with accolades that I've deserved and worked so hard for. It's like, hey man, like I want to be respected for what I have in my resume, and Brave has been able to do that, and the UFC never really showed me my respect. But again, it's only business, nothing personal. I got signed to a dying weight class.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that quickly. It was a really strange time for the flyweight division when you got picked up, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sucks because I got extremely belittled. It's like I did something that Conor McGregor did at 14-2, two
Yeah.
weight division champion. I did it at 5-0 and defended a belt in the process.
Yeah.
So it's like this is what you want in the flyweight division. You want somebody to kind of revive it. That was really my hopeful goal. And then you give me two last minute fights with ultimatums, and if I didn't take them, I'm not being signed. If I didn't take them, I'm being cut. If I didn't do this, I didn't. So it's like, why am I being treated like
Yeah.
literally trash when I have a bigger resume than almost anyone else coming into the UFC? So it is what it is. I'm trying my best even still today to kind of be like, man, it's not personal, it's just business. But yeah, it sucks.
And obviously you had more experience because you had such a strong amateur background as well, didn't you? But what is that?
Yeah,
But what is that like? UFC, you go 1-on-1 and then you're released, because that's not something that happens usually, especially or
it's
apart from then
yeah.
when they were having the problems with the flyweights.
It's completely demoralizing because again, at the time I was on a 34 fight win streak. So when I lost Alex Perez again, the loss I don't care about. It's the fact of how I performed. I really wasn't mentally there on Monday because the UFC kept on giving me ultimatums, kept on
Yeah.
giving me last minute fights, kept on really peer pressuring me to take this fight and forced me to take this fight. By the time I got in there, I didn't even want to fight. It was
Yeah.
Monday and my fight was Saturday. I'm like, I just want to go home. I don't care what happens. I'm already accepting I'm gonna go 3-1 in the UFC, So and again, for being on a 34 fight winning streak in, I think, a 7-year span of amateur and
Yeah.
pro, it's like no one thinks that way. So for me, I just wanted to go home, and I lost, so be it. And then I make an assumption and they cut me. So it's one of those things that I make assumptions that the UFC flyweight division is going to slowly be cut.
Yeah.
And then I get cut for it compared to Colby Covington can call Dana White whatever he wants. Conor McGregor can call Dana White whatever he wants and get away with it. And it's like, what? This isn't fair at all. So you kind of learn that this game becomes extremely political, and you have to find your own little sense of motivation while you do it.
Is there a bit of sort of bitterness seeing how the flyweight division has sort of built itself up a little bit now that you weren't able to stick around a bit?
A little bit. There's definitely some bitterness. I would be lying if I'm like, no, I don't care. Because even like one of my last opponents, Amir Abazi,
Abazi,
made his
yeah.
debut in the UFC, and he beat Malcolm Gordon, which he also was supposed to fight in Brave, never made his debut because of COVID. So it's one of those things that it sucks. Especially when you just beat a guy pretty decisively, and
Yeah.
he is now ranked top 15 in the world because there's literally only 15 flyweights in the UFC.
Yeah.
It's like, that's really not fair. But it's the fact of, again, I have to understand it's only business. Sadly, it is a very political sport. I mean, you see boxing, people dodging fights, promoters, dodging promoters. But in UFC, especially in UFC, it's been very, very notable. But you have other promotions like Bellator, One, Brave, and so many others, Ryzen or Risen, however you want to pronounce it, that, hey man, this guy deserves this next title shot. They're going to give him the next title shot,
Yeah.
and that's who you should defend it by. It doesn't matter if they're popular. It doesn't matter if they're this or that, or you're a bankable guy and we think you're going to lose. You're going to fight them because that's what this sport is all about. So the UFC has changed a little bit. I am a little bitter that they are now kind of reviving the division. Good for them. I'm happy. The small guys do deserve we deserve respect, especially we put our lives on the line every single day. But it's the fact of if you want some of the best, you guys definitely have to call me back. But if you want to call me back, I have to know that I am being well respected in my return. So in that case, right now, I'm definitely sticking with Brave. I'm pushing with Brave. I have my goals with them to be a two-weight division champion, and from there, we'll see where the world takes me next.
So you mentioned they're two-weight division champion again. The plans to move back up to bantamweight once you've won the belt, once you won the tournament.
Man, I'm fat, so I could definitely use the bump up. It's the fact of, I did it in Titan. I did it in the IMF where I was given I wasn't a two-weight division, but I was two-time champ. I know I can do a three-peat, So at 25 right now is where I believe I'm at my prime. I'm 28 years old, but eventually this weight cut's going to be too much of a hassle. It already sucks, So I can just imagine in 2 years from now where I'm just like, I just can't compete as productive as I want to. So let me bump up. And even though I am small in height, I mean, you look at Lineker, you look at John Dotson, you look at some of the small guys, they've competed very well. Jimmy Rivera is my height. You look at him, competes very well. I think Uriah Faber and all them. So Frankie Edgar now at the weight class. So it's the fact of the small guys can't prevail, and I want to be able to push forward at 135. But first I gotta claim 125.
Yeah. One flyweight in Brave who has a similar amateur background. He also called out the winner of the tournament when that happened. Mohammed Makayev. What do you think about him?
It's funny. Him and I are teammates. And I hope to fight him one day. It's funny because I do talk to people that we both mutually know that are friends with, and I'm just like, they're like, oh, how do you feel about this? I'm like, he's a young kid. He's excited. He's hungry. He reminds me of me when I first started. I was calling out everybody. And obviously I kind of gave him a small little blueprint of what you can do if you do certain things, and he's just hyping it up. And I mean, he's extremely famous in Russia, in the Middle East, and everywhere else he trains. But it's the fact of when I did the IMF, I wasn't as popular because the IMF wasn't as popular. But now that the IMF has really established themselves, given he was a two-time junior world champ, so he didn't fight in the open division, like 21 and up. So he beat a bunch of kids, and I like to make fun of that. But he, he's a young kid, and he's doing his thing. He's a smart fighter. He's a little impatient right now, but it's part of the game. When you're a young person, you want to experiment, you want to be free, you want to be wild, and you're courageous. And for me, I give him nothing but credit for it. But I hope he doesn't. I hope he moves up appropriately in his bracket in a sense, because I know Brave is doing that for him, but they're also letting him fight, in different promotions just to keep him active. Yeah. He's a kid who wants to play, and that I'm happy for him, and hopefully I do get to play with him soon enough, but hopefully not too soon. I want to fight him when he's at his best, and right now he's nowhere near that.
Yeah. So you said you know him a little bit. So what's he like in the training room?
Well, I've never trained with him. But him and I have had car rides together, talked and hung out. And I commentated for a few of his fights when he was in the IMUF. He's a very, very smart fighter. Yeah. He's trained his whole life. He knows the different ins and outs of the game. And he's trained with extreme veterans where he's kind of ahead of the game. Like myself, when I first started, I'm just like, I want to train with John Dotson when I'm, turning pro. I want to train with Cub Swanson when I'm turning pro. He's not even my weight class. I want to train, so taking those ins and outs from these high level people, and even me giving him advice, he takes it very well and he pushes forward. So I do believe he's a very smart fighter. He is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the championship realm, maybe in a year or two. But until then, I hope he moves up appropriately. But I think he's a very smart fighter, very humble kid. No matter what you see on social media, he's very humble. And again, that's just how people are. But I'm excited to see what happens next for him.
Going back to talking about the UFC very quickly, I want to talk about the finish over Garbrandt. That's one of the strangest
Mhm.
finishes I think I've ever seen. So
Um, it's funny because I saw him pick up Figueiredo when he fought him multiple times, and Figueiredo just kind of flail on top, and Jared Brooks doing the easy slam. So I was like, well, I'm gonna get taken down. So if I get picked up, I'm not gonna just flail and let him take me down. I'm gonna crawl down and get parallel because that's what you're supposed
yeah,
to do in wrestling. It just so happens that you can't slam in wrestling. They usually do when you get double leg like that, people are on their knees trying to pick you up and then they roll. And for me, I decided to do like the little body lock to try to roll. This dumb guy decided to still try to slam, and I'm like, you're a high level wrestler. There's no reason you should be trying to slam me. I thought he was gonna go on his knees and we're gonna create a scramble, but he decided to still try to do this big slam, and my legs fell on top of his head. He easily dazed himself, and I'm like, oh man, he's limp. I gotta take advantage of it, and I took
yeah,
his back and finished the job. So it is what it is. When people say it's an accidental KO, did he do it to himself? In all technicality, yeah, he did do it to himself. But I put him in that
yeah.
position to make him go, I'm still gonna do it. And it's like, that's not the most educated decision. And sadly, it happened the way it did. But I got an ESPN because of it, so I'm cool with it.
You mentioned him quickly there. What do you think of Davison Figueiredo carrying that division in the UFC now?
He's a phenomenal champion. He's very strong, very smart. I know I was rooting for Alex Perez in that fight,
Yeah,
and the way he tapped out Alex Perez and the way he demolished Benavidez twice and all these people, even against Brandon Moreno, like he
right now.
looked okay. He didn't look phenomenal, but those first 2 rounds he looked great. And honestly, because that point deduction was the only reason it was a
Yeah,
draw. So it's a fact of he's still technically the true champ. I think that point deduction was a little fast, but it is. There was no warning; he just got deducted.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
it is what it is. So for me, I think he's a phenomenal champ. He's very different. Yes, he might be Brazilian, and you might not be able to promote him as well because he can't speak English or this or that. But he is a man. He's a force to be reckoned with. That guy's a little powerhouse, and
Yeah,
he throws bricks at people. As you can tell,
yeah.
he just put his hands down. He's like, I don't care. I just want to put on a show. And for me, as a former UFC flyweight that went in there to try to put on a show of knockouts, I'm perfectly fine with that. Put
Hmm.
your hands down, do the Max Holloway against Lamas and like,
Yeah.
let's go right now and start throwing. Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. So I think he's definitely reviving the division. I do see him fighting Cejudo somewhat soon.
Mm.
And if he beats Brandon Moreno next and Cejudo just coming back for a possible win, which I believe Cejudo would win that
Yeah.
fight and then leave again. But those are money fights to make.
Let's talk about Cody Garbrandt. Well, he was booked in that fight at first. What do you think about him possibly moving down to flyweight?
He will never ever make flyweight.
Yeah,
Um, and I say this respectively.
yeah,
I just think it's BS that he says he's gonna move down to flyweight. He barely makes bantamweight, and TJ Dillashaw is
yeah,
smaller than him and struggled to make flyweight. So I don't see him doing it. And if he does, it's gonna happen just like what happened to TJ, where he's gonna take one shot and his body's gonna give
yeah.
out because he's just extremely dehydrated still.
I was gonna say you saw the struggles that TJ had. So and
I mean, I
and
used I used to train with TJ, so when they said he was moving down to flyweight, I'm like, he's small, he could do it,
mm,
but it's going to
but
be
it was tough.
extremely devastating to his body, and it was.
Yeah. Away from fighting, you've done a bit of commentary now, as you mentioned a bit earlier. How have you found breaking into that side of the game?
I like it a lot. Titan FC and Lex McMahon has been, really, really nice to me on not just bringing me in as both the play-by-play, but also the color commentator. I've been able to be the John Anik, the Joe Rogan, the
Yeah,
guy that shouts out the sponsors instead of just a fighter talking about what he sees. It has trained me a lot to be as intellectual as possible and be able to improv where I can go. So being a fighter, man, it's just not going to last forever. My goal in the UFC and hopefully in Brave soon after COVID
yeah.
is to be a full-time commentator like Paul Felder. I think he's a
Elder.
phenomenal one. Dominic Cruz and DC and all these guys, when they retired, this is what they can do. So for me, that's my ultimate goal is be able to travel the world, be able to see fights
Yeah,
and watch fights for free and just have fun. Plus you get to dress up, look good, feel good. And it's an easy job for me and I believe I'm decent at it. So
yeah,
I just enjoy the process and being able to be there fight week without having to cut weight and not get punched in the face is the best thing
yeah.
possible.
Being very modest there. When I've seen you commentate on Titan, you did a really good job. So,
I appreciate it, man. Cheers. Thank you.
um, how do you sort of get in the right mindset for a fight? What do you have any tricks backstage that you try to get? Do you get
Um,
yourself hyped? Do you prefer to fight calm? What?
I I like to have as much fun as possible. You know,
Yeah.
my coach, Master Bob Shermer, and my brother are usually there. Given overseas becomes a little difficult, but they're usually there. So I always play fight. I always kind of slap box with them or
Yeah.
pummel or do whatever. Like I I had one fight, which was the Alex Perez fight, where I got forced by one of the American top team coaches to do this extreme workout. And I'm like, no. And they're like, do this damn extreme workout. You need to be warmed up for your fight. And I was exhausted going out there.
Yeah.
And like I was drenched, but like I was warm, but already too warm. I was burnt
Yeah.
out. And you know, it for me, every fighter is different. My college coach is the same way. He's like, you need to burn off one good one, and then your next one's gonna be the best because that's where you're like healthy. I'm like, I get it. I see where that's coming from, but it's not my style. I need to have fun. I need to be free. Given I do start slow, and DC yelled at me as well. Is like your first round shouldn't be your warm up because you might get knocked out.
Yeah.
Once I that fight with Alex Perez, I got knocked out. So it's the fact of I need to figure out a different game plan. But for me, I need to smile. If I'm not going into the cage smiling, there's usually a problem. And when I was in Titan for sure, I always went into the cage smiling. I always put on a performance. So I need to get back to that mindset. And so far, I can say I'm finally happy enough to do so. So now I'm just waiting to play.
Obviously, we've got a big fight coming up in the next couple of weeks. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier. Did you have much experience working with Dustin at ATT?
Not one on one. Him and I were pretty much sauna buddies. We sauna every day
Oh,
together,
yeah.
so we had good conversations. He taught me a lot about his foundation because I had my own, and so looking at it from, and again, I try my best to take out the biasness. Like I'm not a fan of Connor. I would love to see Dustin win that fight. The fact is, Connor is a better boxer. He's a better tactician, and he's very good at getting the mindset. The Poirier, his mind is so much stronger. He's so much clearer than where he was, and his boxing obviously has improved significantly. The only problem is every single fight he's had that he's won with his boxing have been brawls.
Yeah.
You look at Hooker, you look
Yeah.
at Gaethje, you look at so many others, they've been brawls. Connor's not going to brawl.
Yeah.
He's going to keep his distance. He's going to stay long, and he knows how to pretty much time his punches very, very accordingly. And I can honestly see it lasting a little bit longer than what happened with Cerrone. I think Connor is going to win. But if Poirier, what I would say if I was his coach is you need to make this a brawl. You need to muff him just like a boxing
Yeah.
fight because Connor's not going to take you down.
Mhm.
You need to muff him like a boxing fight and stay close and make this a brawl, an inside boxing brawl game. And you have the conditioning for it. You obviously know Connor doesn't.
Yeah.
But if you stay at a distance, you're going to get pieced apart. And you felt Connor's punches before. He's going to drop you. So again, I love Poirier to death, and I would love to see him knock out Connor any day. But the fact is, when it comes to skill set, I believe Connor offers more.
If you're Poirier, you probably got to look at the Conor fights against Nate Diaz to kind of see where you're going to have success, haven't you?
Well, and honestly, Diaz and Poirier are very, very similar in the styles, at least stand up wise. The only problem is, Diaz decided to stay a little too long,
Yeah.
And eventually was able to, tire out Connor and stuff like that because there were 5-round fights. Given I know it's a 5-round fight as well, but what if it doesn't last that long? I don't know how well Poirier's chin is. Obviously, he's been knocked out before plenty of times. So
Yeah.
it's the fact of if you take a clean one, you might get dropped, especially from Connor. He's notable for that.
Yeah.
So you need to make this a pressure game. Do what Nate Diaz did in third, fourth, and fifth round in the first round because you have to make this an exhausting fight. You need to make him a one-trick, one-round pony, and then after that, if it becomes a battle of attrition, then that's a Poirier type of fight.
Just quickly before we finish here, what are your goals for 2021? Obviously, the goal is to become the winner of the Brave Flyweight Tournament, but what apart from that?
Honestly, I'm not even thinking about that. For me, I don't really have any goals. I think it's to live as free as possible. COVID, we were locked up. Now we're kind of slowly getting back to a free life. It depends on where you're at in the world. But, for me, it's new year, same me, just hopefully not as dumb. We all have made our mistakes in the past, and hopefully every year we get smarter and learn from them and be able to make up for lost time and do certain things. For me, in a sense, I'm trying to make up for lost time, have as much fun as possible, be as playful as possible, and smile that much more. So for me, it's enjoying the moment, not wasting time because as we can tell from last year, time gets taken away very, very fast. And sadly, we don't have many times with many people for so long. So just enjoying the process and living every single day as another adventure.
Want to thank you for the time today, Jose. Any shout outs you want to give, or where can people follow you and keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Jose Shorty Torres and pretty much all platforms, or Shorty Torres MMA. TeamShorty.com is my website. Everything ships worldwide, and 100% of the proceeds go to my foundation, Team Shorty Foundation, to help kids, teens, and young adults stay inside the gym and off the streets, and giving them a different opportunity to meet a father figure, a mentor, a mother figure, somebody, a role model, a positive environment, and possibly even learn some martial arts and how to beat people up in a positive way. So it's a crazy experience. So please, guys, TeamShorty.com, and that's why we say we can, we will. Together we are Team Shorty. Thank you so much.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for the time tonight. Best of luck this year.
Thanks, man. Cheers.